Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take these massive stacks of data, history, and strategic decisions, and we try to distill them into useful, actionable knowledge you can absorb in a single sitting.
Today, we are attempting to solve a pretty major paradox in the business world. It's about the immense scale of a corporation that, for all intents and purposes, actively avoids the spotlight.
We are profiling Danaher Corporation.
Exactly. A company whose technology underpins almost every major development in modern medicine, in diagnostics, and biotechnology. Yet if you go outside of Wall Street, almost no one even knows their name.
And the scale is just astonishing. I mean, we're talking about a Fortune 500 company that in 2024 generated revenue of almost $24 billion.
23.9, to be exact. And they employ 63,000 people across the globe.
It's a crucial component of the S&P 500. They make the literal building blocks for vaccines, for cancer detection, but you'll never see a Danaher phone or a Danaher search engine. They are, absolute masters of working behind the scenes.
And that quiet power is really the core of our deep dive today. Our sources track the dizzying corporate evolution of Danaher, starting from its most humble beginnings.
So our mission today is to unpack the successful strategy that allowed them to shift from this, sprawling, diversified industrial conglomerate.
Right, making things like hand tools and pressure sensors.
To a hyper-focused global giant in healthcare technology.
We need to understand not just what they bought and sold, but how they did it. We're going to dive into the story of the founding brothers, Stephen Rales and Mitchell Rales, and really define the corporate engine they installed, the famous Danaher business system.
That system really is the secret sauce, isn't it? It's what allowed them to constantly acquire, spin off, and just ruthlessly refine their portfolio into the specialized machine that we see today.
And finally, because they are now so focused on these vital life-saving technologies, we have to examine the ethical implications of their success.
Yeah, particularly the recent high-profile controversies around the pricing and global accessibility of some of their most essential diagnostic tests.
It's a crucial part of the story.
Okay, so let's begin with that initial snapshot of the modern company. It's an American healthcare giant headquartered in Washington, D.C., and it's focusing intensely on biotechnology, life sciences, and diagnostics.
And if you look at the 2024 revenue breakdown, that focus is crystal clear.
Right. Diagnostics is the biggest piece of the pie.
It is, at 41% of revenue. Then you've got life sciences making up 31%, and biotechnology rounds out the portfolio at 28%. The mission is fully converged on high-tech healthcare delivery and manufacturing.
It's just an incredibly specialized portfolio.
It really is. And to truly appreciate the strategic clarity of the modern Danaher, you have to realize that 40 years ago, that focus was completely, totally absent. We have to go back to the very beginning.
All right, let's unpack this history. And it starts in a place completely unrelated to gene therapy or, anything we associate with them today. The company's true origins are in real estate investment.
That's right. It was organized way back in 1969 as DMG, Inc., which was a Massachusetts real estate investment trust.
So like a REIT, what were they even doing?
For nearly a decade, it was purely a financial entity. Eventually, it got reorganized in 1978 as Diversified Mortgage Investors, Inc., and it focused on these specialized projects like retirement home developments.
So a pretty sleepy business.
Very slow, very traditional, and from what we can tell, struggling.
Okay, so the narrative takes a really sharp turn in 1983. This is with the entry of the Rales brothers, Stephen and Mitchell.
And this wasn't a friendly investment. They came in very aggressively. They successfully waged what's called a proxy battle, ousted the existing management, and took control of what was, for all intents and purposes, a shell company.
They saw a vehicle they could use.
They immediately transformed that vehicle into an engine for external growth. They weren't interested in retirement homes. They were interested in buying and running industrial enterprises.
And in 1984, they gave this new corporate vehicle its iconic name, Danaher.
Correct. And this coincided with the company's reincorporation under the Delaware General Corporation Law, which is a very common move for corporations looking for favorable legal structures.
But the name itself, that's such a fascinating touch of humanity in what is otherwise a pretty ruthless corporate story.
It really is. It was named after Danaher Creek in western Montana.
A place where the brothers were fly fishing and they conceived the whole idea for their new aggressive M&A enterprise.
Exactly. It anchors this massive impersonal conglomerate to a very personal, quiet moment of reflection, which is a really interesting contrast.
A sharp contrast, yeah. Because the strategy they immediately employed was anything but quiet. It was aggressive, big game M&A hunting.
You see this mentality immediately in 1985 when they went after the Scott Fetzer Company.
And they launched a hostile bid, a $400 million hostile bid.
Which was a lot of money back then.
Mhm.
And this detail is critical because they lost that bid. And they didn't lose it to just some rival industrialist,
No, they lost it to Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway.
to Buffett himself. And that loss serves as a really foundational moment. It tells us two things. First, that the Rales brothers were playing in the major leagues from day one.
Absolutely.
And second, that competing against someone like Buffett, who famously buys strong companies and just holds them indefinitely, requires a unique, disciplined, strategic advantage. You can't just be another holding company.
It must have signaled to them that they needed a superior operating system, something to let them extract value faster and more efficiently than anyone else.
I think that's exactly right. And that strategic advantage soon crystallized, though it didn't yet have its famous name.
And their aggression did pay off the following year in June of 1986.
It did. With the successful hostile takeover of Chicago Pneumatic, they paid about $60.8 million to acquire the final 32% that they didn't already own.
And Chicago Pneumatic was a pretty significant industrial prize at the time. It included Jacobs Manufacturing Co. and, importantly, Matco tools.
And this acquisition perfectly illustrates the nascent application of what would become the Danaher Business System, or DBS.
Oh.
Well, most acquirers buy a company and then they run it as is, maybe make a few changes. Danaher bought Chicago Pneumatic, but less than a year later, in June of '87, they sold the main Chicago Pneumatic business name.
But they retained the key assets.
They retained Jacobs Manufacturing, including the highly valuable Matco Tools division. They were buying companies to immediately optimize them and then harvest the most profitable parts. Jacobs was then renamed Matco Tools Corp.
That sounds like a form of corporate arbitrage. You buy the whole thing, you strip out all the complexity, and you keep the crown jewels.
That's a great way to put it.
So they bought a famous tool company, sold the famous name, but kept the foundational assets. I mean, that's not really a business sale. It sounds more like extreme organizational efficiency.
That's exactly the point. It's the application of the DBS principles before they were even formally named that. The Danaher Business System is not just a set of financial rules. It is a culture of continuous improvement.
Right, adapted from lean manufacturing principles.
Often traced back to the Toyota production system, yes. It focuses intensely on the elimination of waste, rapid response, and constant refinement.
So when they bought Chicago Pneumatic, they weren't just acquiring assets, they were acquiring a platform to apply this system.
Precisely. And the assets that couldn't be efficiently improved under their system were just quickly spun off and sold, like the rest of the Jacobs divisions they divested in 1991.
And that really establishes their initial industrial footprint. It moves them decisively away from real estate and into instrumentation and industrial tools.
It does. By 1986, for instance, they had already added a company called Qualitrol, which gave them specialized instruments like Gilbarco Veeder-Root underground fuel storage sensors and Dynapar motion sensors.
So by 1990, Danaher had successfully transitioned from a sleepy investment trust to a classic diversified industrial conglomerate.
But one with a crucial difference. It was operating under this highly disciplined, constantly self-improving operational system, DBS, which prioritized efficiency over just sheer size. And that system was about to guide them through a massive, multi-decade pivot.
Okay, so moving to the 1990s, Danaher continued to solidify this position as a major player in the tool and industrial sector. They're building this empire of physical products while, at the same time, refining their application of DBS.
The 1990s were all about cementing market dominance through scale in their core industrial segments. The acquisition of Eastco Hand Tools, Inc. in 1990 was huge.
Why was that one so important?
Because it led to Danaher becoming the exclusive hand tool supplier for Sears.
Wow.
At the time, that was a massive channel. It's a powerful commercial validation of their ability to manage a huge supply chain efficiently under the DBS model.
And they just kept consolidating. In 1994, they acquired Armstrong Tools.
Right. Adding established brand names like Armstrong and Allen to their portfolio, further cornering the U.S. industrial and consumer tool market.
And their ambitions were growing beyond North America.
They were. In 1995, they completed their first international acquisition, a German company called Henxler GmbH.
And what did they make?
They were a manufacturer of high-precision rotational sensors, counters, and relays. So this shows they were already seeking out advanced manufacturing and high-tolerance sensing technology, wherever they could find it globally.
Okay, so here is where it gets really interesting for me, because the strategic pivot starts right at the end of the century. After building this massive tool and sensor empire in 1999, Danaher acquires Hatch Company for $325 million.
And Hatch specializes in water and wastewater analytics. This is a subtle yet profound shift.
It feels like it comes out of left field.
It does, but it's the ultimate DBS-driven move. Think about it. They shift from making the physical tools for industrial work, the wrenches and the compressors, to making the scientific instruments used for high-precision measurement and chemical analysis.
That's a huge leap in complexity.
A massive leap. Water quality is a highly regulated field. It requires complex instrumentation, chemical reagents. This move took Danaher from simple industrial manufacturing into the complex, regulated analytical sectors.
And the change in focus was reinforced at the highest level. In 2000, H. Lawrence Culp Jr., a longtime company leader, was named CEO.
And he took the reins and immediately set the stage for aggressively pursuing this new analytical future.
What's fascinating is how Hatch just opened the floodgates.
Yeah.
Once they proved they could successfully acquire and integrate a complex, regulated analytical company using DBS principles, they aggressively started piling on medical and scientific instrumentation.
That's right. You see that diversification into life sciences and diagnostics beginning with the dental industry. They acquired Gendex Dental Imaging around 2003 or 2004.
Which began this significant dental portfolio that, as we'll discuss, they would later decide wasn't core enough for them.
Right. Then in 2004, they reinforced that initial analytical investment with Trojan Technologies, which is an environmental engineering firm focused on water disinfection. So still in that water space.
But the key leap, the really big one, came in 2005.
The acquisition of Leica Microsystems.
And Leica is a huge name in science. They produce equipment for microscopic imaging, measurement, analysis, things that are essential for biotechnology and medicine.
This is a major leap in technical sophistication. You're moving beyond basic sensors into the advanced high-resolution optical and imaging tools that are essential for any research or pathology lab.
And this systematic assembly of the modern scientific kit just continued. In 2007, they spent $520 million on a company called Vision Systems.
Vision Systems made automated instruments, antibodies, and biochemical reagents used for biopsy-based detection of cancer and infectious diseases. That is pure high-margin diagnostics.
And Danaher was not afraid to put immense capital behind this new high-tech focus. This whole era is really defined by the two largest technology bets they had made up to that point.
The first, in November of 2007, was the purchase of Tektronix for $2.85 billion.
Their largest acquisition ever at the time.
By far. And it was a massive commitment to high-tech instrumentation and electronic measurement. It proved they were deadly serious about moving up the technology value chain into complex electronics.
And the second massive bet was a true analytical powerhouse, SCIEX.
Acquired between 2009 and 2010 for a total of $1.1 billion. This was done in two stages, first buying a 50% interest from a company called MDS, and then the remaining 50% from Life Technologies.
Okay, so SCIEX is crucial. Why? What do they do that's so important?
They are massive in mass spectrometry and chromatography.
Okay, so for anyone listening who isn't a chemist, can you contextualize that for us?
Absolutely. Think of mass spectrometry as the forensic tool of chemistry. It allows scientists to weigh molecules with incredible precision.
So it's vital for what? Drug quality.
Exactly. For ensuring drug quality, identifying unknown contaminants, validating complex biological samples. And chromatography is the separation method that prepares those samples to be analyzed.
So by acquiring SCIEX, Danaher gained control over the fundamental instruments required for modern drug discovery, for pharmaceutical manufacturing, quality control, and for advanced toxicology.
That's it. So by 2010, the company had fully shed its primary industrial identity. Its largest, most expensive assets were not wrenches or compressors anymore.
They were the sophisticated scientific and medical instrumentation powering global laboratories. The foundation for the current healthcare giant was fully laid, built on these analytical platforms they could integrate using DBS.
The decade starting in 2011 is where the strategy shifts from just acquiring diverse analytical businesses to acquiring massive scale within a very narrow, focused vertical.
The acquisitions get dramatically bigger, but the focus narrows like a laser beam onto healthcare.
And the 2011 acquisition of Beckman Coulter immediately accelerates this shift. They bought it and then quickly divided it into diagnostics and life sciences segments.
And that move instantly reinforced the three core divisions, diagnostics, life sciences, and biopharma, that define Danaher today.
It did. But the true genius of Danaher's later strategy, and really the combination of DBS, is defined as much by what they sold.
Right.
They realized that to make the truly massive, multi-billion-dollar strategic bets they needed for biopharma dominance, they had to ruthlessly shed every single asset that wasn't top tier in terms of margin, growth potential, or strategic fit.
And that disciplined divestment is what created the organizational clarity and, I imagine, the immense capital needed for the blockbusters that followed.
That's it.
But that makes sense financially, but to what extent did that constant churn, buying, integrating, improving, and then selling off assets they'd owned for decades, to what extent did that risk organizational paralysis or maybe the loss of a coherent corporate identity?
That's a great question. And that's where DBS really proves its worth as a cultural system, not just a process. DDS provides a standardized language and a toolkit for operational improvement that applies whether you're making a hand tool or an mRNA component.
So it's the common thread.
It's the common thread. It ensures that the core culture of efficiency and improvement remains, even when the assets themselves change dramatically. They are constantly optimizing the organization, which is why they can handle these massive spin-offs without collapsing.
Let's detail these major spin-offs because they tell such a powerful story of strategic commitment and culling.
Okay, so in February 2013, they sold off one of the key pillars of their industrial past, the joint venture Apex Tool Group, to Bain Capital for $1.6 billion. That's a serious chunk of their manufacturing legacy just gone.
But the biggest move came in June 2016 with the massive corporate spin-off of Fortive.
This was a monumental shedding of assets. Fortive took with it huge pieces of the original industrial and instrumentation businesses.
Including Matco Tools, right, which was one of the crown jewels they had kept from that Chicago pneumatic deal back in the 80s.
Exactly. Matco and AM Theo Coats, both gone to Fortive.
And they just continued to strip away complexity. They had built up a substantial dental business over the years, including Nobel Biocare, which they acquired for $2.2 billion in 2014.
But by December 2019, they spun the entire dental segment off into Envista Holdings Corporation.
So even though dental is high margin, it just didn't fit the narrow scientific bioprocessing focus they were cultivating?
It didn't. And the final piece of this strategic culling came recently, in September of 2023, with the spin-off of the Environmental and Applied Solutions segment into a new public company called Veralto.
And that included some highly recognizable, important names that signaled their pivot 2 decades earlier.
Like Hatch Company.
Hatch, Chemtreat, Trojan Technologies, and even creative tech brands like Pantone, Esco, and Videojet.
They literally stripped away every single asset that wasn't pure life sciences or diagnostics. It's a breathtaking act of corporate refinement.
It really demonstrates that they are not interested in being a general conglomerate. They want monopolistic influence within a handful of hyper-specific, high-growth, regulated scientific markets.
And once that focus was established, the biopharma blockbusters started rolling in, cementing their leadership in the life sciences manufacturing supply chain.
The scale of these deals is just staggering. In August 2015, they acquired Pall Corporation for $13.8 billion.
And Pall is absolutely critical for filtration and fluid management in pharmaceutical and biologic manufacturing. It's essential.
The very next year, 2016, they acquired Cepheid for $4 billion.
Which was a crucial move to expand their molecular diagnostics, giving them control over that unique rapid testing cartridge technology, which will feature heavily in our discussion of the controversy later on.
Okay. Then in 2018, they acquired Integrated DNA Technologies, IDT, for $1.9 billion.
And this acquisition was strategic gold. IDT manufactures something called oligonucleotides and synthetic DNA.
So for the listener, what are oligonucleotides?
They're small strands of synthetic DNA or RNA that act as primers or instructions. They are the essential genetic components you need to start virtually any modern molecular test or gene sequencing process.
So this explains their immediate relevance during the 2020 pandemic.
Absolutely. IDT was manufacturing key components needed for almost all of the COVID-19 testing protocols. Danaher positioned itself as the supplier for the suppliers.
But the single biggest strategic move was the acquisition of the biopharma business of General Electric in March of 2020.
For a staggering $21.4 billion.
$21.4 billion.
And this deal, which they subsequently rebranded as Sativa, instantly made Danaher the largest player in the biomanufacturing supply chain.
So what does Sativa do?
It provides the essential technologies and services, so consumables, instruments, software, that are needed for the development and manufacture of vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics.
To put it simply, If a pharmaceutical company is making a monoclonal antibody drug or a vaccine, they must use components supplied by Sativa or Pall.
That's the level of control they've achieved.
It's incredible, and the name Sativa really reflects that new focus.
It does. Cito, meaning cell in Greek, and eva, a Latin suffix meaning doing or capable of. The name literally means capable of working with cells.
Now, it's important to note the regulatory steps involved here, right? This deal was so large and potentially monopolistic.
Right. The Federal Trade Commission mandated that Danaher divest certain overlapping assets, specifically things like chromatography hardware, resins, microcarriers. They had to sell them to Sartorius AG for about $825 million.
Which is really a regulatory nod to the immense power they were consolidating.
It is, and the momentum hasn't slowed. In August 2021, Danaher acquired Aldevron for $9.6 billion.
And Aldevron is laser-focused on producing highly specialized GMP-grade plasmid DNA, mRNA, and proteins used specifically in mRNA vaccines and advanced gene and cell therapies.
They are positioning themselves to capitalize on the next few decades of biotech innovation. It's very forward-looking.
And then in May 2023, they merged Pall Corporation with Sativa.
Right, streamlining their massive bioprocessing and filtration units into a singular integrated biotechnology group. And they closed the $5.7 billion acquisition of Abcam in December 2023, further bolstering their antibody and reagent offerings for the research segment.
Speaking of recent developments, 2024 shows no sign of slowing down.
Not at all. In June, Danaher's Cepheid unit received FDA approval for a rapid hepatitis C RNA test.
And the key technical feature here is its ability to detect the virus using just a fingertip blood sample in less than an hour.
Which completely bypasses the traditional requirement of sending a sample to a centralized lab. This decentralizes and speeds up critical diagnostics. It's a huge step.
And just recently, in August 2024, they acquired Genedata,
a company that reinforces their analytical and software capabilities within the life sciences platform, ensuring they stay current with bioinformatics and drug discovery data processing. It's just this relentless, continuous cycle of buying and optimizing highly specialized scientific platforms, all driven by the DBS playbook.
So we've tracked this journey from, retirement homes and ratchet wrenches through this strategic culling of Veralto and Fortive, and finally to mRNA manufacturing. Let's look at what the focused post-Veralto Danaher actually looks like today, using the 2024 revenue priorities as our guide.
The modern configuration is defined by extreme focus on three high-tech, high-growth verticals within the healthcare industry, and each of them operates with a high degree of integration under the umbrella of DBS efficiency.
Okay, so first up is diagnostics. It's the largest segment at 41% of 2024 revenue.
And this division provides the instruments, the consumables, software, and services used by clinical labs and hospitals globally to rapidly and accurately diagnose diseases.
So think of them as the centralized industrial plumbing of the diagnostic world.
What's a good way to put it? Second is life sciences, representing 31% of revenue. This group is centered on discovery and research.
So these are the tools used before the drug is ready for manufacturing.
Exactly. They develop products used to identify the causes of disease, research new therapies, and conduct testing for new drugs, vaccines, and gene editing technologies.
And finally, biotechnology, making up 28% of revenue.
And this division develops products specifically focused on the actual development and manufacturing of therapeutics. This is where the heavy-duty bioprocessing equipment, the filters, and the complex manufacturing solutions live.
What's essential to understand here is the synergy, right? Danaher doesn't just own three separate divisions. They own the supply chain that links basic research
in life sciences
to high-volume manufacturing and biotechnology, and then finally to patient care and diagnostics.
It's a fully integrated pipeline.
So let's delve into the specific subsidiaries within these groups to illustrate that immense specialized reach. In the biotechnology group, the primary assets are Sativa and Pall Corporation, which, as you said, merged in May of 2023.
And this merger consolidated control over the entire bioprocessing workflow. Sativa and Pall are responsible for manufacturing the disposable, single-use bioreactors, the specialized tubing, and the high-efficiency filtration systems that are just non-negotiable for producing most modern biological drugs and vaccines.
How big is that combined group?
They employ over 16,000 associates and are absolute global innovation leaders in separation and bioprocessing technologies.
Okay, so moving to diagnostics. This includes several major recognizable players. We have Beckman Coulter Diagnostics,
which is central to clinical lab automation. They provide the large, centralized testing machines you'd find in most major hospitals.
And complementing that are more specialized units like Cepheid.
Known for its molecular diagnostics, the rapid response diagnostic unit we discussed earlier. Then there is Leica Biosystems, which focuses on instruments and reagents crucial for pathology and cancer detection, and Radiometer, which deals with acute care diagnostics, often right at the bedside.
So it's like having a general practitioner and a specialist within the same family. Beckman Coulter handles the high-volume general blood work.
And Cepheid handles the immediate, high-specificity molecular testing for pathogens like TB or COVID.
Got it. Then there is the massive life sciences segment, the 31% dedicated to research and discovery.
And this is a highly varied and rich group that really fuels the future pipeline. It includes the recently acquired Abcam, a major supplier of highly specific antibodies and reagents critical for research.
It also includes Beckman Coulter Life Sciences, focusing on research instrumentation and integrated DNA technologies, IDT.
Providing those essential genetic primers for molecular research.
And we also find Leica Microsystems here.
Supplying the microscopic imaging tools, molecular devices, offering analytical instrumentation, the part of Pall Corporation that serves non-biotech life science filtration needs, and of course, SCIEX, offering those incredibly advanced mass spectrometry technologies crucial for chemical validation and compound identification.
What stands out to me is that Danaher has positioned itself at the point of greatest necessity. They don't make the drug itself, but they provide the irreplaceable infrastructure.
The instruments, the reagents, the analysis software, the critical manufacturing components.
That the drug companies and diagnostic labs absolutely must have to operate. They are selling the building blocks of science itself.
Which brings us directly to the critical lens of accountability.
Yeah, this transition is vital. When a company gains this level of focused, indispensable power over technologies that literally save lives, the success story inevitably morphs into a conversation about ethical responsibility and accessibility.
And the primary ethical dimension we need to examine focuses squarely on Danaher's diagnostic subsidiary, Cepheid.
And specifically the pricing of its essential test cartridges. These are the cartridges that are critical for rapidly detecting diseases like COVID-19, HIV, and most notably tuberculosis, TB.
The core conflict here is the tension between maximizing corporate profitability, which has been the foundational principle of the Rales brothers' strategy from the start, and ensuring global public health accessibility.
Especially in low-income, high-disease burden countries where these diagnostics are most needed.
Exactly. And organizations dedicated to global health, particularly the Treatment Action Group and Doctors Without Borders, have been very persistent critics. They've been publicly pressuring Cepheid to lower the prices of these tests since 2019.
And what's their argument?
They argue that the prices are unconscionable given the immense public health need and what they claim is the relatively low manufacturing cost.
So the argument from the advocates is pretty stark. The expert MTBRF test, which detects TB, was being sold for $9.98 per cartridge.
Correct. And advocates argue that the true cost of manufacturing these cartridges, including all the materials and labor, is estimated to be closer to $3 or even less.
So that disparity suggests profit margins that feel excessive when you're dealing with an essential life-saving tool in countries that lack public funding for universal health access.
And this became a highly visible, very public dispute when a major cultural figure, the author and vlogger John Green, intervened.
Right. In September 2023, he released a video specifically highlighting these ethical concerns.
And he used his platform to mobilize his massive online community to contact Danaher directly. That video drew unprecedented public scrutiny to this usually very quiet corporation.
And the power of that public pressure was, it was undeniable.
It was. 1 week after Green's video went viral, Danaher and Cepheid announced a specific, measurable action. They committed to a 20% price reduction for the expert MTBRF TB test cartridge.
And that decision dropped the price from $9.98 to $7.97 per cartridge, specifically applicable in high TB burden countries.
Advocates celebrated this as a significant step. They acknowledged that corporate action had been compelled by public pressure.
However, the response came with a crucial caveat that really complicates the victory and highlights the company's continuing balance of interests.
A very important caveat. While the primary TB test price dropped, the price for the expert MTB-XDR test, which is the specialized test used to diagnose drug-resistant TB.
The form considered the deadliest and most complicated to treat.
That price remained unchanged at $14.90.
So if we look at the implications, it tells us that Danaher conceded on the highest volume test, where the public criticism was loudest.
But maintained the high profit margin on the most medically critical and complex test, the one for drug-resistant TB. Advocates argue this is proof that the strategy remains focused primarily on profit maximization, even if it requires a slight PR concession.
This event really provides a perfect snapshot of the implications of Danaher's successful strategy. They have successfully acquired and consolidated technologies that are vital for global disease management, using DBS to achieve maximum operational efficiency.
And the success of their focused strategy means they hold considerable influence over who gets access to these life-saving tools and at what cost.
This constant tension between maximizing shareholder returns and ensuring global public health accessibility for critical diagnostic tools will undoubtedly continue to define their ethical footprint as they deepen their control over the healthcare supply chain.
It raises an important question for all of us. When you are manufacturing the core defenses against pandemics and fatal diseases, does the traditional corporate model of profit maximization still hold up? Or does the critical nature of the product demand a different global pricing structure?
What we have tracked today is more than just a corporate history. It is a textbook case study in corporate reinvention, driven by ruthless strategic clarity and operational excellence. Danaher Corporation is the ultimate example of a highly curated, rapidly evolving conglomerate.
That identity is fundamentally defined by the constant, intentional process dictated by the Danaher business system. It's a process of acquisition buying knowledge, technical scale, and market share, followed by the simultaneous spin-off shedding complexity, shedding capital, and shedding any assets that are not immediately core to the highest growth, highest margin scientific and healthcare verticals.
Yeah, they systematically stripped away tools, dental equipment, environmental testing businesses, becoming almost purely a healthcare company supplying the absolute essentials. And the results are undeniable. They're a massive Fortune 500 company.
Responsible for supplying the fundamental building blocks of modern medicine, from the specialized filtration systems in the Cepheid merger to the specific mRNA components made by Aldevron and the advanced molecular diagnostics from Cepheid.
The discussion surrounding the Cepheid controversy highlights that the company's success places it at the center of the largest ethical debates of our time. Their intense focus on vital, life-saving technology that literally determines who gets access to rapid diagnosis in disease-prone regions, inevitably increases the scrutiny on their ethical responsibility regarding global accessibility and pricing.
Absolutely. Just thinking about the scale and audacity required to manage 63,000 people and spin off $30 billion worth of companies in a single decade, all while flawlessly integrating multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. I mean, that demonstrates a level of strategic discipline most companies can only dream of.
But with that unparalleled discipline and market control comes an elevated moral burden.
So here is a final provocative thought for you to consider. Danaher's entire history has been defined by the principle of maximizing efficiency and financial focus through the Danaher business system. Now that they have successfully concentrated almost all their energy into the most critical life-saving sectors of the global economy, does their sheer success necessitate a new strategic calculation?
A calculation where accessibility for critical goods must be factored in alongside the traditional measures of corporate efficiency and profit.
Are they too big and too important for their strategy to be only about the bottom line?
It's a tension that every shareholder, every patient, and every public health advocate must keep an eye on as Danaher continues to supply the very essence of human medical defense. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the quiet powerhouse that is Danaher Corporation.
We'll see you next time.